Welcome back, everybody. We've heard all the stories, right? Dead people getting SNAP benefits, foreigners stealing our COVID aid, Somali immigrants ripping off everything from a food program to an autism program. When is the United States government going to stop so much of this easy-made fraud? Joining us now to tackle that big question, the CEO for the Alliance for IRS Accountability. He's a former prosecutor. He's one of our favorites, Chuck Flint. Chuck, great to have you in the show.
Great to be with you.
All right, you look at some of these schemes, and I have. We started reporting on the Somali immigrant scheme all the way back in August of 2024, and it's really not rocket science what these immigrants or what these fraudsters or these foreigners have done. It seems like the government is completely blind to very obvious things that would stop fraud. What's going on? Why can't we stop it? Or maybe is there a motivation not to stop it?
Well, John, the first thing that people really want to see for just a change, how about somebody takes accountability? You don't hear any accountability from Tim Walz, and I'm pretty sure he probably campaigned on that when he ran for governor. What you get is a lot of finger pointing from Tim Walz, from Ilhan Omar, and the taxpayers that are ripped off. They're sick and tired of it. They're trying to put food on the kitchen table, and you've got a $1 billion scam, by the way, which includes people that are fraudsters that are connected to these politicians. It's not a good look. And right away, we need some accountability.
Amen. How on earth does this make it so far up the chain? I mean, this was found out, but I am 100% positive there are plenty of these instances that were not caught. How does it make it so far up the chain before it's finally captured?
Amanda, it's a great point. So two of the people that were involved in this took $20 million in grants, and one of them is a former campaign staffer for Ilhan Omar. He got $3.2 million. He pled guilty in August of 25. Another one took a $16 million grant, and she had her Election Day victory party at his restaurant in 2018. Tim Walz, as I said, has been also connected to these fraudsters. Keith Ellison, Congresswoman Omar received campaign contributions from these people. The Somali community in Minnesota is very politically active. There are roughly 100,000. But what's also interesting is that 75% of them are allegedly on welfare services. And the whole thing, it's not a good look, and it stinks to high heaven.
Yeah, no, it really has. I want to ask you about something that several of our guests in the last several days have said here at the table. People who've been investigating this, people like the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, several members of Congress, senators, and that is that some of this welfare fraud may be intentional. That it's part of sanctuary city policies, which is lure illegal aliens to your state or your city to rig apportionment, then keep them there as long as you can, even if it means looking the other way. If that turns out to be something that these state workers can show, that Tim Walz or Keith Ellison knew that this was going on and they looked the other way because they had a different motive for the fraud, could federal prosecutors, these great federal prosecutors who've been bringing these cases in Minnesota, possibly look at a governor or attorney general saying, you had a fiduciary responsibility, you intentionally looked the wrong way, you're going to hold the bag, that's the accountability?
John, I think they'll have to, because the amount of money is so high. You're talking billions of dollars of fraud, potentially $1 to $8 billion. You have to consider every option and who may or may not have culpability. I would just add that today, Tim Walz said that he wants to bring more Somalis into his community. And these are the people that were primarily involved in this. The U.S. Attorney's Office said with regards to one program, they charged 87 persons. 78 of them were of Somali descent. And Tim Walz is out here now. I mean, it's just such an insensitive thing to say to taxpayers that are just trying to put, as I said, they're just trying to put food on the table, and their tax dollars are being wasted. They're being scammed. They're being sent overseas. You heard Secretary Besant talking about that. These scammers are using money bureau services like Western Union to go ahead and send it over to Somalia, where it's probably very likely falling into the hands of terrorist groups like al-Shabaab. And the U.S. government just conducted terrorist strikes on Somalia in November.
Yep.
Yeah. This is rubbing salt in the wound for the American people. This year, it started off with all of this examination into DOJ, so the American people found out, especially through USAID, how much of their taxpayers were going to ridiculous things overseas. We learned through the government shutdown how much fraud there was in SNAP. That whole situation got busted wide open. So the American people, I feel like, are yearning for something that is good news, something that's going to actually save their taxpayer dollars instead of spending it. When President Trump talks to the American people next week and he talks about affordability and what he can do to make life better for the American people, what are some of those top agenda items you think he needs to say to resonate?
Well, I think implementing more of the DOGE agenda would be great. And that's just something that kind of stalled. We need eligibility requirements on a lot of these programs. You heard the Democrats during the shutdown constantly talking about, oh, we want more Obamacare, enhanced premium credits, and so forth. But they don't want any conditions attached to that. And this fraud is a perfect example of why you need those things. And American taxpayers end up paying more when our government dollars are being scammed this way or when there's massive fraud. I mean, that money just doesn't get printed.
Yeah, no, it really is. Real quickly before we go, because this just broke a little while ago, Tom Homan says that the face of the Somali community, Ilhan Omar, will be investigated for possible immigration fraud for allegedly marrying her brother. Is that a case that could be brought? Could a member of Congress who got their citizenship through false pretenses potentially face a prosecution?
John, I'm not aware of any law that would say that that's not a possibility. And I would think if Tom Homan has made that representation, that there's probably an avenue to pursue it. I have no knowledge, obviously, of the facts and circumstances. Right. I've certainly heard those allegations in the past, but I would imagine that if he's saying that there's an avenue that they're perhaps examining.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Chuck, as always, we love the great work you do because you not only identify the problem, you often bring great solutions to the table. Great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.
Yeah, folks, go check out the great work Chuck and his group are doing. He's doing great stuff. All right, folks, before we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to ask a big question. Are race-based admission policies still in place at Harvard? We'll talk about that, about a scholarship program that is causing some, well, heartburn for a lot of people. That's next, right after these messages.